Alrighty, how's everybody doing today? And welcome to my channel. It's an educational channel. We take a look at great theories of everything ancient and modern and try to um, elucidate them so that we can use them in our own lives to help us with paradigm shifting, awakening to 5D consciousness, formation of a holistic worldview, and even our quest for better physical, mental, and spiritual health. Today is the 53rd video that we've done on Daniel Ingram and his book called Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha. And this is a book on mostly Buddhist meditation and practice. And Ingram has put in the time over in the monasteries in the Far East and has asked the questions, done the meditations, and now he brings this back to us and puts it right here in our laps. And, you know, it's a book that you really kind of have to study if you're going to go on this process of, you know, enlightenment. But, you know, I don't see it as any type of religious anything. It's really a technology, meditation. It is, you know, recreatable. Every time you sit down for meditation, it's like an experiment. And you know, everybody's a little bit different, but there's a commonality that has been passed down through the last 2,500 years. And to not try to take advantage of that seems like it's kind of a waste. So Ingram has really put everything together here, and I think it's worth it to try to suss it out and utilize it for, you know, whatever purposes that you have. I mean, I know that if you really want to become enlightened with Buddhist meditation or any kind of meditation, it requires many, many hours per day, at least at times. And, you know, not everybody has that kind of time, but even if you're just, you know, doing your half an hour a day, there's still a lot of tidbits that you can get out of this. And, you know, among other things, try to figure out how you can save up so that maybe you can have a 2-week period where you are able to do 12 to 18 hours a day or something. Okay, we are in, I believe this is chapter 31, still on the 3 doors. And these are the 3 doors which are kind of characteristic of the 3 characteristics: impermanence, dissatisfactoriness or suffering, and not self. And these have their counterparts in stages 12 through 14 of the progress of insight. Ingram provides a lot of maps for the various different stages or states of consciousness that we go through as we either do meditation in terms of insight meditation or concentration meditation, the jhanas and the stages. And stages 12 through 14 are conformity, change of lineage and path, and they basically present the 3 doors, and then those, they only last for less than a second each, and then, or even total, and then fruition occurs, and it's kind of like something completely other. And he just got done going through 6 kind of points of was that or was that not a fruition? And fruition is kind of like at least a mini enlightenment, if not a full enlightenment. And you know, he just went through 6 points of if this happened, then it probably wasn't, or it definitely wasn't a fruition. So we're going to start right here and move on. His advice here is if there's not a rather predictable pattern of stages and perspective shifts that begin to become clear, specifically following the course of the progress of insight from stages 4 through 15 as listed above, with their accompanying shifts in perceptual thresholds, write it off as something other than fruition. This brings me to the cardinal rule for sorting out all experiences or attainments. Repeat it again and again and be honest with yourself. Any dishonesty with yourself about these experiences and their interpretations will come back to haunt, humiliate, and humble you. Again, it took me countless cycles through these experiences at many levels over the years to get to the point where I could even begin to think about writing a book like this. I am still quite cautious about hanging my hat on interpretations of new and unusual experiences or what seem to be non-experiences until I have attained them 50, 100, or more times. If you don't have the necessary level of clarity and mastery to repeat the experience of interest again and again, either do enough clear and diligent practice to attain the required mastery, or don't ask the question. Studying theory can only be useful to a certain degree for this. In the end, and always, it is practice and continued direct experience that reveals and clarifies. While it is somewhat true that with clarity comes mystery, this maxim can easily and dangerously be used as a cop-out. A related question is, am I awake? I have met many people recently who have exhibited a common but unhealthy fascination with this question, toying with the possibility that they were enlightened in past lives, whatever, were enlightened earlier in their lives and repressed it, not. Were enlightened by interesting experiences that were bound up in time and space, oopsie daisy, such as arising and passing away events, formless realm experiences, visions of beings, unusual raptures, etc. For these sorts of people, as well as those working on higher paths who are stuck in the in-between stages, I offer the following. Those familiar with the first edition of this book will notice some substantial revisions here. These are based on having access to hundreds of additional reports from people at various stages, which will hopefully provide a more accurate picture of the range of what is available and possible. When I first wrote this, the number of stream enterers I knew well was small. That has changed, and so drawing on that significantly wider base of experience has helped me to add descriptive details regarding the range of what can occur in the wild, which you will now find included here. This is probably a good time to introduce a complicated topic, and not like these other topics weren't complicated, and that is the grades of stream enterers. The complexity arises in that not all stream enterers are created equal, at least in terms of their perceptual abilities, exposures to theory and structured practice, ability to apply those theories, analytical abilities, inclination to investigate, distinguish, and name things, as well as concentration abilities. Some of this will be determined by the contexts in which they attain stream entry, some by their practice, and some seems related to their own innate wiring. There are obviously other ways in which they will vary, but for the question of whether you or someone you know has reached stream entry, this is a good start. specifically regarding fruition. There are stream enterers who know they had a fruition and got stream entry, and those who don't know that they attained a fruition and don't know they got stream entry. There are stream enterers who can get repeat fruitions and those who won't have another one until second path. And this may change with various paths later. There are stream enterers who can get repeat fruitions easily, even during ordinary daily activities, and those who can only get them under special circumstances, such as when on retreat or practicing formal meditation. There are stream enterers who can only get one fruition per day, and those who can get multiples, sometimes even back to back within a few seconds of each other. There is a much smaller percentage of stream enterers who can get what is known as duration, meaning that they can have the fruition last longer than an instant of external time. Though after reality restarts and in retrospect it seems to them like a timeless discontinuity with no passage of time at all, or other reference points for time or other experience. And those who can't. As an aside, for all my meditation abilities, and by way of full disclosure, I'm not one of those people who is certain that they have ever been able to stay in fruition for some period that in external time was more than a fraction of a second. Bill Hamilton used to talk about being able to be in fruition for an hour, something that always impressed me. This was a feat I am not sure I've been able to replicate. Some schools of practice really strive for mastery of duration, and I think it is good to master this attainment, but as of this writing, I haven't been able, for whatever reason, to be certain I had done it. I can generally get multiple fruitions back to back, as well as get them many times per day, often with a high degree of relative ease and with relatively short setup. But duration has always eluded me, though I am not certain of this, as I haven't been meticulous about clocking them, as a few people who are into this stuff have been. The point is that regarding fruition, there seems to be something about people's wiring that will give them specific talents and limitations regarding it. So it is not that helpful and can be problematic to compare your fruition skills, or any other skills for that matter, with others, as some of that may just be how you are built. Clearly some balance of nature and nurture is at work here, and exactly how modifiable our nature is with practice is not entirely worked out. There are those who can easily recognize the fine points of the microphenomenology of the moments that make up entrances to fruitions through the three doors, and those who get fruitions but can rarely or perhaps never really get a sense of how the entrance occurred with the analytical clarity of those more adept in this. That also should not be some source of unskillful comparison, as it causes trouble most of the time. Before awakening, we always had to develop access concentration, attaining mind and body, and working from there every time we meditated, unless practicing very strongly, often and well, when we may have been able to keep up enough momentum to avoid falling back to the beginning. After attaining a path, we begin meditation at the level of the arising and passing away, and proceed with much more skill and confidence. As a stream enterer or above, reflecting on reality or even slightly will result in a nearly instantaneous shift to a mind and body-like state that rapidly progresses to show its more arising and passing away-esque elements, with subtly or more strongly vibrating sensations available for investigation, with even the lightest application of attention in that meditative direction. This can make honestly answering questions about agency, the sense that I am doing things, tricky. For as soon as you decide to try to notice if you are controlling things, suddenly intentions are easily perceived as objects rather than something belonging to a subject. On a whim, those who are at least stream enterers can begin meditating at the level of the rising and passing away, beginning with the double dip state shift at the middle and then end of the out breath. That is the hallmark of that stage. Thus, awakened beings can easily perceive vibrating phenomena. Here's a fun trick to try at the beginning of meditation sessions for those of you who are at least stream enterers. When sitting, resolve to get to fruition. Incline the mind that way just by briefly thinking about it, and then drop down deep with an out breath, noticing subtle vibrations briefly at the beginning and flowing deeply as the breath descends, like you were following it down into dissolution. Stage 5. Then, just gently let the stages unfold and pay attention as needed to navigate the third Vipassana jhana territory, the dark night, up to equanimity, without any further inclination to anything except just what is going on as the cycles unfold. In that same vein, the cycles of insight from stage 4 to 11, and then 15 for those who can get further, fruitions in review, always influence the life of those who are awakened. They are inescapable. They occur as soon as we sit down to meditate. Much more than this, they cycle endlessly in waking hours and even when dreaming. This subtle or overt cycling colors mood, energy level, and perception of phenomena. As soon as a fruition is attained, the cycle starts again and proceeds, though the timing and obviousness of this fact varies depending on how much we are practicing, what is going on in our lives, and how skilled we are at noticing the qualities of these stages. Even when doing concentration practices, these cycles are somewhere in the background. It is possible to ignore them to a large degree for a while when in deep shamatha jhanas, though it takes work to do so. I remember lying down for a nap after lunch when on retreat in India a few days after my first fruition. Before I knew it, meditation was occurring. The nanas were showing themselves in succession without any effort or even invitation as I was trying to sleep. They had their individual qualities, much as I have explained above, though they moved quickly from one to the other, and about 45 minutes later, fruition occurred. Soon thereafter, it was obvious that the cycle had started again. A friend who erroneously thinks he is awakened once declared, "Oh yes, I went through those stages once many years ago, but now I am beyond them." Busted. Toast. Those who are awakened go through these stages hundreds, if not thousands of times each year. There is absolutely no getting around them, barring deep sleep, severe brain damage, strong sedation, anesthesia, or death. Plenty of people who know map theory and who have gotten above the arising and passing away stage hit the dark night, attained to something equanimity-esque, and have then had various further experiences will wonder if they have attained stream entry, formless realms, or just fallen back to the arising and passing away and back to the same pre-stream entry dark night. Even with the above criteria and a chapter like this one, it is not always easy to sort out. It is a lot easier on retreat when people have higher concentration, particularly if the person doing the diagnosing can see your progression and what happens when you practice diligently and do various techniques and report your results. It is a lot easier to diagnose in people who are good phenomenological reporters who can clearly describe their sensate experiences. It is a lot easier in those who are more easily able to attain fruitions. The counterpart to this is that it is a lot harder to clarify questions about attaining stream entry or some higher level of awakening in people who are doing this in daily life, haven't come up in a more technical meditative tradition, aren't good phenomenological reporters, aren't naturally talented at getting fruitions, and aren't that good at accurately applying meditation theory to their practice. So if you are having a hard time answering the question for yourself regarding what has happened in your practice regarding these stages and really care about the answer, my best advice is to learn meditation theory well, go on a retreat with a competent awakened teacher or Dharma companion who knows that theory, and follow good technique in high dose for enough days to make it crystal clear what is going on in your practice. However, it is fair to mention that plenty of awakened people simply don't think about their practice in this way. They may have never noticed that they cycled, never picked up on the patterns, or were never exposed to the maps. There are plenty of awakened people who are coming from other traditions who think about these stages very differently, or who don't even know they are awakened. There are those who don't have particularly strong concentration, don't realize how they got there, are not particularly intellectually curious, or, if they are, never applied their intellect to investigating where and how theory meets practice, never really paid attention to the patterns unfolding, and could not care less. And that is just fine for those who are satisfied with that. I trained in meditation with some of these people who were quite wise and awake, and I got a lot out of sitting and studying with them. Here's a radical statement for all fellow map freaks. Realization is not about insight stages. The fundamental insights apply to all things and are more essential than the stuff I am talking about here. While I consider this section to be important, I acknowledge that it is merely a support for the main point, which is seeing the true nature of experience, one small aspect of which are the stages of insight and the cycles. It is not that cycling doesn't have something to do with learning about the true nature of phenomena, as it clearly does. However, what counts far more in the end is seeing the true nature of sensations, regardless of anything to do with cycles, as we will come to shortly. Thus, if someone is awakened, I brazenly assert they cycle like this, but that doesn't mean they are aware that they do. And if their practice unfolded gently or slowly or without very intense concentration and a map-oriented focus, they may have no idea about most of the things I am discussing here, and yet these things still apply to them. Just because a pattern is occurring doesn't mean everyone will notice it. I poured massive amounts of energy into practice, developed very strong concentration, and care incredibly much about the maps. But that doesn't mean that others who are awakened did or do. Anyway, back to describing the stages. And that's the end of chapter 32, the three doors. And we are now at chapter 33, which is called Review. And review is stage number 16 on the path of insight. So he took a little digression there after fruition to discuss the three doors, but now we're back to the progress of insight, stage 16, review. So, after the cycle. Stage 16, review. is really a phase of cycling again and again from the 4th through the 11th stages, from the arising and passing away to equanimity, plus fruitions after equanimity for those who can get those. In review, we gain mastery of the territory that we have attained. This phase can vary a lot among people, and the descriptions I offer here are for those technical meditators who are aware of the stages and maps and have a formal practice. These days, as I meet people who may have attained stream entry and yet done it on relatively low doses of concentration, I often find it difficult to be sure what they have accomplished. If you find yourself having similar questions about your own practice, I strongly encourage you to go on a meditation retreat, get your momentary concentration strong, then test out what you are capable of with that stronger level of concentration. The first few times through the cycle, after the path has been realized, can be quite intense and even very disturbing for some of us, as the mind tends to be exceedingly powerful for a few days after a path has been realized, and yet is navigating in territory that has not yet been mastered. In fact, the most barking crazy I ever felt during my whole practice history was during the 3 or so hours of reobservation in the first review cycle after my first fruition. Though luckily from the outside, I just looked pissed off and managed to keep it mostly to myself until it passed, and then I got to equanimity again and it was okay. And was okay. 3 cheers for the inner monastery of morality that protects others and myself from acting out of insight-induced yogi mind. We are well advised to be careful, low-key, and mindfully restrained in what we say and do during the few days and perhaps weeks after attaining a path or something that we think may be a path. However, it also sometimes happens that realizations are hardly noticed at all. Or if they are noticed, there is simply the sense, well, I guess that's done. Powerful cycles and the sense that things have been completed are not sure signs that a progress of insight has been completed, as similar feelings can arise in the arising and passing away and equanimity before stream entry for the next stage of awakening. I have a few friends who reached stream entry and kept practicing for a month or more awaiting for stream entry to happen, as they had no idea that they had landed it, as they were expecting something much more profound. I also know plenty of people who thought they had stream entry but were totally wrong, having just crossed the arising and passing away, or not even that. Anyway, assuming you are in review, the following advice applies. First, there are various schools of thought on what to do after your first fruition, simplifying greatly and ascribing names to those schools that they wouldn't recognize except in generalities. There are, at one extreme, the let it settle schools, and at the other extreme, the master review through strong technique and strong resolutions schools, which I will abbreviate and call the strong technique schools, and plenty of schools in By way of artificial dichotomy, the let it settle schools basically advise doing very little except to apply gentle curiosity and accepting meditative practice to your experience and notice what happens, letting the insights come and the stages unfold and flow in their natural, effortless way. If on retreat, just sit and walk according to the schedule while not trying to really do anything else, and just notice how things go. The strong technique schools generally say something very different, such as to practice strong mindfulness every second with strong resolutions to induce rapid and frequent fruitions with as long a duration as possible. You would think that I would fall into the strong technique camp. But having done the experiment myself and learned the hard way, in practice I tend toward a modified version of the let it settle schools. Gentle resolutions are fun to play with, review, but are not necessary to play within. Gentle resolutions are fun to play with in review, but are not necessary. Gently inclining the mind to fruition and sending it sailing easily in that direction is a good idea, if held lightly enough for fruitions to be able to happen, as they involve letting our guard down like throwing a paper airplane. You don't keep pushing it once you let it go. It just glides to the ground naturally. I would modify this advice to suit the individual person depending on your practice style, strengths, and weaknesses. If you are the sort of person who wanders easily and benefits from a bit more structure and direction, and you are having a hard time getting much out of review, try moving in the direction of more moment-to-moment vipassana technique and resolutions. If, on the other hand, you tend to let too much power get out of hand and end up frying yourself, rest in the easy and natural wisdom of the let it settle schools, and you will likely do much better. I did, when I finally learned to follow their advice and gained enough confidence to back off on the power and let the mystery unfold on its own. As review sets in, it can seem that we can control these cycles and stages. It may seem that after we have some maturation of a path, we can call up insight stages in order, just say the number or name them and see what happens, and stay in them as long as we wish, or even call them up out of order, with some traditions and teachers emphasizing this more formal version of review practice. I give details of my own explorations of this mode in the intentional review practice toward the end of this book, in the section on my own journey. From one perspective, awakened beings can learn to master and manipulate the stages of insight through such practices, though such practices can take on